Welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're zeroing in on something that's absolutely make or break for modern corporate success, and that is the foundation of corporate integrity and governance compliance. Now I know, for a lot of executives, the second you hear the word compliance, you probably instantly think of the Department of No, right? You know, the endless paperwork, the administrative headaches, all that red tape that just seems to grind everything to a halt. But look, we are going to completely flip the script on that today. Our main mission in this explainer is to show you exactly how to transform corporate compliance from what feels like an operational drag into a legitimately powerful strategic asset. We're going to break down the actual real-world structures that make this happen, pulling directly from source materials that highlight the absolute best practices out there.
So let's just dive right in. I want you to honestly ask yourself right now, is your corporate integrity built on a solid, unbreakable framework? Or is it just built on a set of assumptions? As an executive, or frankly, just a focused learner in this space, you already know the business landscape is completely unforgiving. It does not spare organizations that leave their structural integrity up to chance. We've really got to take a hard look and critically evaluate our own structural legal risks. And we have to question the true depth of our stakeholder trust. Like, is that trust actually resilient enough to survive a full-blown crisis? If your governance is just reactionary, waiting for things to break before fixing them, you're leaving yourself wide open to risks that honestly could have been completely avoided. And this is exactly where the methodology of Gvs Advisory really steps up to the plate. Their whole core ethos, smart compliance solutions, really caught my eye in the source material because it hits those systemic vulnerabilities right on the head. We're not just talking about mindlessly checking boxes on some regulatory form here. It's about real intelligence and strategy. By putting the focus on smart compliance, they're pointing us toward a much more proactive, forward-thinking model. It basically gives organizations a super practical way to bridge that massive gap between, abstract ethical goals and concrete boots-on-the-ground governance. Moving right along to Section 1, defining the governance framework and taking a look at what it actually is.
Okay, so we know the end goal is smart compliance, but how in the world do you actually pull that off? Well, we have to look under the hood. According to our source material, making this a reality requires designing 3 distinct but totally interconnected pillars. First up, you've got the overarching corporate governance frameworks themselves, basically the literal rulebook for exactly how power and accountability flow through the whole company. Second, and honestly I think this is absolutely crucial, is the board structure. It's all about strategically organizing the board so that real, serious oversight is baked into the absolute highest level of leadership from day one. And third, corporate ethics programs. And let me be clear, we are not talking about some dusty handbook they hand out at orientation. We're talking about deep-rooted, culturally ingrained ethics programs that literally guide the day-to-day decision-making across the entire enterprise.
Now, what's super interesting here is how you take those big, broad concepts and actually ground them into something tangible, something globally recognized. Enter ISO 3701. This is the international benchmark for strict anti-bribery and anti-corruption measures. When you're trying to design those deep-rooted ethics programs we literally just talked about, you absolutely cannot rely on guesswork. You have to align your internal measures with universally recognized international benchmarks, just like this one. Implementing ISO 3701 means you're basically adopting a universally respected language of integrity. The second you do that, it immediately signals to the market, to regulators, to your partners, really the whole shebang, that your anti-corruption stance is rigorous, it's tested, and it aligns with the absolute highest global standards out there.
So having a fancy benchmark is great and all, but how does this actually play out in real life? The source lays out a really clear operational flow that relies on 3 critical tools. Step 1. Whistleblowing channels. You can kind of think of this as your early warning system, making sure issues can bubble up safely. That then feeds directly into Step 2, internal compliance programs. These programs take that vital, on-the-ground info, mix it with daily operational monitoring, and essentially make sure the ship stays on course. And all of this is held up by Step 3, regulatory change tracking systems. Look, the law is never static, right? It's always shifting. Having a rigorous tracking system ensures your internal programs are never out of date. It creates this really beautiful self-sustaining loop of continuous compliance and protection.
All right, let's pivot to Section 2, the core client benefits, and really dig into why all of this matters.
So, we've walked through the operational tools, the what. But now you might be wondering about the why. Why should an executive board pour real resources and capital into building this machinery? Well, a smartly designed framework actually operates in 2 different directions at the exact same time. On the defensive side, it acts like a heavy-duty shield.
It actively mitigates those structural legal risks we mentioned and proves incredibly effective at preventing internal corporate fraud and misconduct. But offensively, and honestly, this is where it becomes a true game changer, it acts as an engine to build deep, unshakable trust with board members and international stakeholders. You're no longer just hiding from risk, you're actively using your rigorous governance to confidently project absolute reliability to the global market. And that is exactly what opens doors to massive new partnerships and investments.
I actually want to just pause here for a second. Solidifies your institutional integrity. That is a direct, exact phrase straight from the source material, and man, it is powerful. Really let that sink in. Institutional integrity isn't just some corporate buzzword. It is literally the absolute bedrock of long-term survival in business. When a crisis inevitably hits, or when market conditions get super turbulent, it's that institutional integrity that dictates whether your company shatters into a million pieces or stands completely firm. By putting these governance structures in place, you're essentially pouring the concrete that secures both your company's reputation and its entire future.
So, bringing this all together, smart compliance is pretty clearly the ultimate asset. It perfectly marries trust with prevention. It's not just some dusty rulebook sitting on a shelf somewhere gathering cobwebs. It is a highly dynamic, modern mechanism. By utilizing real tools like regulatory tracking, whistleblowing channels, and strictly adhering to standards like ISO 37001, you're doing two things at once. You're preventing corporate misconduct from the inside while completely empowering your board to operate with ultimate confidence on the outside. It is, for sure, a total paradigm shift in how modern executives need to view corporate governance.
Which leaves us with one final, absolutely critical question for you to take away from this explainer today. I want you to look at your own organization right now. Are your current structures truly strong enough to prevent internal misconduct and simultaneously build real international trust? If there is even a shadow of a doubt in your mind, well, it might just be time to rethink your whole approach and start moving toward smarter, much more resilient compliance solutions. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and above all, keep building that integrity.